Hey Boyd, I wanted to talk about jobs this time around, because why not? This game is effectively a manager position, and if I'm good about putting up these videos, it's effectively a side gig of my current actual job. Please forgive my voice. It is winter, and I might have a cold. But so, jobs. I have been working at several different jobs since high school. I've worked at least 7 off the top of my head. My current one is my favorite, despite the most unprofessional management I've ever dealt with at any of my jobs. But I'll digress on that for now. This is probably going to be a bit long. I'll try not to keep it too much. I would hate to have this be like a whole half of the video when I'm sure most people just want to listen to the ambience of the game. But since I've had a good amount of experience, I figure maybe I can give some decent advice for people who are looking for jobs, because the job market sucks. And it has not changed that much since I started working. So, as I said, my first job was in high school. It was as soon as I got my car, my parents made me get a job, and my first job was at a Subway, which is not glamorous and not at all as fun as the Odd Ones Out would have you believe. It was mostly me, maybe another high schooler, and then our 20-something-year-old manager. And I had to do everything, basically, at that job. I had to make the sandwiches, obviously. I had to clean the dishes, I had to clean the back room, the freezer. I had to take trash out sometimes. I had to clean the bathrooms, clean the main floor, change the soda, cash register, things like that. So what that job, it basically just kind of introduced me to the concept of working on a schedule. I would go there typically right after school, and because the other person who worked there on the same shifts as me was also a high schooler, we would run into each other at school, but we didn't talk that much in school. It was such a separation of environments and friendship, I guess. More of just a camaraderie, really. But so, one of the things I learned at Subway, aside job management skills, was that it is inevitable dealing with creeps. If you are just in general, I think everyone has a creepy person who shows up at their job, male or female, you know? But this guy, this is a story I tell to some people who are curious, and I'll give you a rundown, and if anyone is actually interested in the full story, then I will probably tell the full story on a different episode of this. So there was this one guy. He came in very close to closing time, a couple days out of the week, several weeks in a row. He was very tall, but I was in high school, so very tall could just be 6 foot. I don't know. What made him super creepy was so the Subway looked out onto a highway, and he would stand on the other side of that highway under a street lamp, because people exist to be stereotypes, I guess. Or he wanted to be extra creepy. I would fathom that is probably what he was thinking. And he would bother me. He would stare at me. He would never ask for a sandwich. He would ask for soda, and that's it. And it got to a point of him doing that and certain other events that I won't get into right now because I don't want to make this too long. The cops had to get involved. Anyway, I left that job not because I quit or got fired, technically. What my manager said to me was that there was no room on the schedule for me anymore. There were apparently too many high schoolers working at that Subway that they just couldn't give me any hours. So I wasn't technically fired, but there was not a lot that they could do in terms of my schedule. So that job went down the drain. And from there, I was kind of floating. I was still in high school. It's not like I needed a job. I think it was the summer of my junior year where I got my second job, which was working for a house cleaning service, specifically beach houses, in one of the rich parts of the place that I live. So it was really annoying. Paid very well. I got it because a friend of my mother's was on the cleaning team and was able to give me an in because there were some teenagers on the team already. And we would go into this beach islands. They were basically islands that kind of broke off of the main area that we live. And rich people would rent out these beach houses for their families or for parties or whatever. And it is basically that. You just clean it. But these people were gross. I like cleaning. I really do enjoy cleaning. It's very calming for me and very, like, therapeutic, you know? That's why I like kind of mundane jobs. Like this game, for instance. It's very just, I know what I need to do. There's a number of things that need to be taken care of, and I can take care of them. That's kind of what cleaning is. Very beautiful beach houses. Very beautiful homes that I will never be able to step foot into again because they are very expensive. One time, though, this is probably the grossest thing I had to deal with at that job. Not the grossest thing I dealt with at any job ever. I might get to that later. Depends on time. So I mostly cleaned the bathrooms because I didn't really care. I had the stomach for it, I guess. And so in this one beach house, there is a separated tub and shower. And I was going to start with the tub like I normally do. And in the tub was about an inch of pee sitting in the tub with the drain closed, obviously. So that sucked, and I poured a lot of bleach into it to try and get the smell out, and then just to clean it, because I don't know how long it was sitting there. But, like, missing the toilet, sure, it's a little bit further than the door than the bathtub was. But an inch? That bathtub was 5 feet long, effectively. The whole bottom. An inch? That's on purpose. That's purposefully not using the toilet. It's so gross. Anyway, that job paid very well. I think I was making like $500 a day. Long days. We had to clean at least 4 to 5 houses a day. It was a whole thing. Really made me, I've always been appreciative of, like, custodians and housekeepers. I understand, it's a very taxing job. It can be a very taxing job, and I appreciate it more, especially after all that stuff. Because the stuff that they have to deal with is crazy. Now, my third job is a job I technically had twice. I momentarily quit from this job to go to college, and then I went back to it during the summer. I worked at a bowling alley, which sounds really cool, but unfortunately there is something about bowling alleys that turn people into feral things, and I have so many stories I could tell about this place. I won't name it, because it's a very specific brand of bowling alley, and I don't want to, like, give myself away or get in trouble with the brand. I don't think that would happen, though. Tons of things happened at this place. I was a custodian, for one. That's how I knew I was going to get hired, because the applications went out before the building was even finished. I was hired before the building was finished. I was cleaning in that building before it was open to the public. There was just dust everywhere from construction. But so I applied to be a custodian, because I already had cleaning experience. So I figured that's the easiest thing. I don't want to work a very people-facing job, because that was my least favorite part about Subway, was being the cashier. And I didn't want to be a alley server, because I didn't want to be a waitress, effectively. I liked hanging out with the waitresses, though. Again, I have a lot of stories I could tell about this place. One story I'll tell is a very brief one. It just highlights the immense stupidity that people seem to inherit when they walk into a bowling alley. I watched a grown man, not out of anger, no emotion as far as I could tell, he was just doing it for fun. He chucked his bowling ball at the overhead TV. where his scores were being displayed. And he laughed, and his friends did not laugh, and I had to go immediately get a manager, because that was crazy. Another brief one that's just about stupid people is I once watched 3 dudes each roll a ball down the same track at once, and then they were really upset when the balls wouldn't return. And I had to explain to them that they had jammed the machine by doing that, and it would be a minute. And they weren't happy about that. I think they just left before their game was even over. So, that's that level of entitlement. This job, the bowling alley job, is where I experienced the grossest things I would ever experience at any job, because I was a custodian. I took out trash, I cleaned bathrooms, and like I said, people are not in their right minds at bowling alleys for some reason. So it was a lot of stuff I had to clean up, and like I said, I have a lot of stories. If anyone is interested, if anyone shows interest, then maybe I'll tell them. So I had that job. Around the same time, I decided to get another job, so I was kind of doing a part-time thing, but not exactly part-time. I was still working full-time at the bowling alley and working part-time at a department store. A clothing store. This was the worst job I ever had. And I mean that, comparatively, even to the bowling alley job. This was the worst job I ever had, because the manager hated me, I think, purely because I was the youngest person on the team. I was a teenager, I think 16 to 17, and everyone else, including her, were like above the age of 50, right? And I did my job well. I always strive to do my job well. She always got up in arms about phones, which is fair. However, if I'm not in the middle of doing anything, I feel like it's fine for me to check my phone for a minute. But I digress about that. I had a system with the cleaning, where I would do a number of things within the span of an hour and then just repeat, and that kept me on a constant clock. My manager did not like this. She did not like the fact that I was being efficient, because I wasn't, in her words, more or less, answering the custodian calls. Now, what upset me about this was my circuit brought me around the entire department store. So every department, I passed them at least once an hour. Every hour. If there was an issue, I feel like they could have been adult enough to get my attention while I was within their vicinity, rather than trying to get my attention over an intercom that I told my manager I could not physically hear because it was so deteriorated. I could not make out any words. I don't have the best hearing. That just made it all the worse. It just sounded like static to me, and I told her that multiple times. I guess she didn't believe me. But I got to the point where I just started heavily slacking at that job because I was trying to do my best. And that's the thing, is managers will never actually want you to do your best. They just want you to do it how they tell you to do it, and then they say that that's your best. That's such crap. I did a really good job. I'm sure if any other manager, if I had anybody else who was actually paying attention to what I was doing a really good job. I was on top of everything. I was on top of the bathrooms, of the trash, of the sweeping, of the cleaning the 6 glass doors that this department store had. I was on top of all of it. And it all looked great. But that's not good enough, because it's not how she wanted it done. I guess she wanted me to just kind of stand in one place until someone called for me, which is crazy, because I also had to clean the bathrooms every hour. There was a time sheet. I had to do it every hour. Now, sometimes, I would take a little bit longer cleaning the bathrooms. I would do more of a deep clean if I didn't feel like doing a lot that day. So it would take me most of the hour, maybe 15 to 25 minutes to clean one of the bathrooms, and there were only 2. And if I felt like I had more energy, then I would not as deeply clean the second one and maybe get that on this, next hour. But she hated that. She hated that. And so I quickly realized that that job just was not for me. And I did get fired from that job. She did fire me, which is still crazy. But this is also back when I didn't really have a backbone yet. I was still really big pushover. So I was like scared and anxious about getting fired, even though I didn't want to work there anymore anyway. And I still had another job. It wasn't like I was going to be jobless. It was just a bad experience overall. A very interesting story, though, is sometimes there were a lot of dressing rooms, and sometimes some of those dressing rooms would be used for storage. One time, I was vacuuming a dressing room, and I opened the last door down the hall, and there were just mannequins filling up that dressing room. And I have a very bad fear of mannequins, so that was not a happy time for me in the moment. But I digress, I guess. That job sucked. And I do have other stories, but they're not as interesting, and thinking about that job just makes me upset. So I stopped that. I went back to more or less still full-time at the bowling alley until college, and then I technically quit. I told them that I would like to return when I was not in college anymore, and they were okay with that. And so I came back, and I got the job again. It was very simple, and I worked it, and I worked it for the whole summer, and then college was coming back up again, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna soft quit. I don't know if there's a real term for it. And my manager said, okay, we are blacklisting you from working here now, because you have quit more than once. And I could not believe the words that came out of his mouth, because I thought that he was a really chill guy. I watched him get promoted from an engineer to a manager, which is a very rare thing for me to see somebody get promoted to a manager, rather than them just hiring another manager. So anyway, yeah, I was blacklisted from working at the bowling alley, and I have made it a very big effort to never go back there. It has not been hard. I love bowling. There are better bowling alleys around here that aren't in your face all the time and loud and obnoxious. So that's that job. I'll speed through the rest of these because there's not much. I did work at the college I went to. I worked in the cafeteria because kitchen, I was used to it. It was mostly just serving food. Not doing a lot of cooking. Doing mostly baking, actually, which was fun. And serving to the, other college students and doing all that. And it was fine. It made me money while I was in college, still paying off student loans. I don't think student loans should have interest, but that's a topic for another day, maybe. So I worked there, and I went back, stopped working at the bowling alley, and then I started working at a fast food restaurant. Again, I would call Subway fast food. But this was a different fast food restaurant. This was I wonder if it's too specific of a place. I've already named Subway, and I might just end up bleeping out these words anyway or something. But I worked at a Freddy's, which is a funny name, because I do like Five Nights at Freddy's. But it was a steak burger place. Smash burgers, basically. And I loved making smash burgers. I loved doing that. It was so much fun. Making the burgers, making the sandwiches, making the fries. I loved it. I would have stayed with that job if not for two things. The pay was kind of bad for the time. I had a decent amount saved up, so I wasn't hurting for money. But I was also out of college, needed money. So I did all that. And the second thing is the managers. We're not good managers. Other than the actual, dude who owned the building. He was cool. Every other manager sucked. They all sucked. Some of them were adults that had no concept of personal space, and some of them were other teenagers that power tripped the whole time. And I could tell you so many things about that void. I could tell you so many things about that place. There's one story in particular that I would love to get into, but it is such a fun story to tell of a kind of fun event. It was very funny, and everyone is okay. I will tell you how I actually ended up getting the job, because this was the most different approach I had taken to getting a job at the time, which was me literally walking into places asking for jobs. And like nowadays, I was mostly turned towards applying online, the worst thing in the world. But I walked up to this Freddy's, and I was looking at the banner that they had on the front of the store to like get the website so I could upload my resume and do all the junk that's needed. But I actually caught the owner walking out as I was walking up. And he asked me if I wanted a job, and I said yes, and he said, okay, cool, we can do an interview right now. So that was fun. That's a very rare occurrence, but it can happen, so that's fun. There is prospect in going out and physically talking to people, because sometimes they don't like the online stuff either. There's actually, if my current job falls through, there's a bar that's hiring that I would love to work at, because it's also an arcade, and it is so cool. But that aside, I worked at the Freddy's for a while. It was fun. A lot of stories. Not as bad. A decent amount of stories. Not all of them are that bad. Just mostly about the managers, and how I don't like them, and how they didn't like me. Oh, I could tell so many stories about just one specific manager. But I won't get into that right now, because I'm already taking up a good amount of time, and I don't want to do that. I might actually end up cutting this in half, depending on how long it gets. But we'll see about that. So I worked at the Freddy's, and that leads me to my current job. So that was like 7 or 6 jobs leading up to the one I have now, which is at a grocery store overnight. It's very nice. I don't have to talk to a lot of people. It is very simple work. We just take stuff out of boxes and put them up on the shelves. It's very simple work, and my managers try to make it the most obnoxious, annoying method ever. The first time we worked there, we had this manager who had since left and now is my manager again, but he's better now. He made me cry so much, because I was still not really fully myself. I hadn't fully realized myself yet, and so him just kind of yelling at me, no one likes being yelled at. But so yeah, I cried for a while. I can admit that. Haven't cried at that job in a while, and not because of that job. But anyway, it's a very easy job. You would think otherwise if my managers talked about it, or if my coworkers talked about it. I don't know what it is. But it's where I'm at now. And the way that I got the interview for that job is a little less glamorous. A little less cool luck, as with the fast food place. My friend, who I had befriended at the fast food place, his stepdad, I think, he was the current general manager at the grocery store, and he does not work there anymore. But so we were able to get interviews fairly easily, because my friend had direct contact with the manager, so it was pretty simple to set up an interview. It sucks the commute is like 40 minutes, but like, that's not that bad, really. Compared to like other things, I would rather drive 40 minutes, especially because I work night shift. The way I'm going, there's not a lot of traffic, typically. Unless I happen to leave really late in the morning, and morning traffic has started up. But so yeah, this didn't end up being a lot of advice. Maybe there's some good nuggets in there. It's mostly just me talking about jobs while playing a game that's the simulation of a job, and while also trying to make YouTube a job, I guess. I don't know yet. This is just kind of for fun, for me to build up confidence in speaking, I guess, if I want to actually be able to do stuff on YouTube. But so that is all. Thank you for listening, if you did. If you just skipped to the ambience, I don't blame you. And if you did not, I hope you enjoy the rest of the game ambience, forever how much longer this video is. Thank you. You can comment if you want to. Maybe talk about a job experience of your own, or just talk about how cool this game is. That's also an option. Or just say hi. That's appreciated. You can like the video if you really want to. If you didn't like it, then you can dislike it, and then it won't show up on your algorithm anymore. Fun fact, I feel like a lot of people don't know that. The dislike button does have a purpose. So if you do not like this video, go ahead and dislike it. You won't get any more of my videos. Amazing how that works. And subscribe, maybe, if you want to. This channel is going through a phase right now, so I apologize for confusion in the wake of me figuring out exactly what kind of content I want to do. But I hope you enjoy it nonetheless, if you do decide to stick around. Thank you again. It was nice talking to you, Void. This is Null leaving, I guess.